Okay, so picture this for me, if you will. You hear these whispers, right? Legends, rumors, stories about this land that's just overflowing with gold. Mountains of silver, unimaginable riches.
And it's not like, oh, we're just going to sail over and trade a little. No, we're talking about conquering an empire. And get this, with only a couple hundred men, some cannons, and a few horses.
Yeah, it sounds insane, right? But that's exactly the kind of audacious story we're diving into today. The Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire. And we're doing it through the eyes of Bernal Díaz del Castillo, specifically his account, The Conquest of New Spain.
Now, you've probably heard of Hernán Cortés, the conquistador in charge, right? But what makes this deep dive so interesting is we're getting this firsthand account from one of his soldiers, someone right there in the heart of it all.
And not just any soldier. Diaz actually wrote this account decades after everything happened, almost like he needed, to set the record straight, to get his version out there. It's a perspective often ignored because, well, Cortés was the one calling the shots.
And what really strikes you about Diaz's writing is the honesty. He doesn't sugarcoat the brutality, the difficult realities of what they did.
He talks about the hardships, the ever-present danger, the ambition that drove them, the fear.
He shows this very human side to these conquistadors, which is often overlooked.
He's incredibly upfront about their motivations, too. Like, he doesn't shy away from the fact that they were lured by the promise of wealth. But he also emphasizes, I think really emphasizes, this deep desire to serve God and King.
Yeah, and that's what's so fascinating, this interplay between faith, greed, and ambition. It adds a whole other layer to how we understand this period of history, this idea that they weren't just explorers, but instruments of God's will.
Destined to reshape the world in his name. Okay, so let's put ourselves there for a second. We're setting foot in Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital.
What do we see? What kind of civilization greets us? Well, Diaz paints a very vivid picture of Tenochtitlan. This wasn't some primitive village. This was a thriving metropolis, a testament to the ingenuity and power of the Aztecs.
He talks about this city of canals and causeways, this city that seemed to rise right out of the lake.
Temples reaching for the sky, bustling marketplaces, gardens showcasing the empire's wealth and sophistication.
He even describes Montezuma's entrance. The Aztec ruler, adorned in gold and jewels, carried on a litter.
Attendants sweeping the ground before him, this carefully crafted spectacle.
Designed to demonstrate the sheer grandeur of the Aztec Empire.
But it also, whether intentionally or not, revealed just how vastly different these two cultures were.
Right, and that's where the clash of civilizations becomes so stark, isn't it?
This initial wonder giving way to misunderstanding, then fear, and ultimately conflict. It was a clash of worldviews, this struggle to comprehend each other's beliefs and motivations.
Makes you really think about how easily things can break down, how misunderstandings can spiral when you have these two vastly different cultures colliding.
And it makes you wonder what could have been, what knowledge and understanding might have been possible, if those initial encounters hadn't been so clouded by suspicion and fear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like they're both looking through the wrong end of a telescope,
Yeah.
trying to make sense of each other through this lens of cultural difference. But there's this other layer we have to think about, the language barrier, right?
Yeah.
How do you even begin to bridge that gap?
You're right, you can't downplay the role of interpreters in all this. Imagine you're in this completely new world, trying to forge alliances, figure out who's with you and who's against you, and all while facing this wall of language. One wrong word, one misinterpretation could mean the end of your whole mission. And that's where figures like Malinson come in, also known as Lama Lynch. She is absolutely crucial to this whole story.
It's almost impossible to overstate her importance, wouldn't you say? I mean, she's not just translating words, she's bridging two completely different worlds.
Yeah. Exactly. She became Cortez's most trusted advisor, not only translating the Nahuatl language, but also helping him navigate the complexities of Aztec diplomacy, their alliances, rivalries, their entire worldview.
Talk about high stakes. And speaking of navigating complex situations, let's talk about Cortez as a strategist. Burning his ships upon arrival, that's quite the statement. What do you make of that decision?
It was a huge gamble, no doubt, but a calculated one. It tells us a lot about Cortez's leadership style. He knew he had to eliminate any possibility of retreat, even for himself. By burning the ships, he instilled this sense of desperate resolve in his men. Failure simply wasn't an option.
But he also understood that brute force wouldn't be enough, especially not against an empire like the Aztecs. He needed to exploit their existing weaknesses, turn their enemies against them.
Exactly, and that's where the Tlaxcalans come in, this powerful indigenous group, constantly at odds with the Aztecs.
Cortez sees this opportunity, this chance, to form a strategic alliance.
A move that would prove decisive in the conflict.
It's classic divide and conquer, right? Understanding the political landscape, knowing who to use to your advantage.
Precisely. The Tlaxcalans brought much-needed troops. They had invaluable intel about Aztec military tactics.
Not to mention their knowledge of the terrain.
Right, but it also adds another layer of complexity to the whole conquest narrative.
Because it's no longer just Spaniard versus Aztec. Now it's this multifaceted conflict with multiple players.
Each with their own motivations.
And at the heart of it all, you have Montezuma. He's a fascinating figure, isn't he? This ruler of a powerful empire, facing this unprecedented threat. He seems caught between caution, curiosity, maybe even fear.
He's one of the most debated figures in this story. Some historians believe he was paralyzed by this prophecy, the return of the god Quetzalcoatl. Others think he was strategically biding his time, trying to assess the true danger posed by the Spanish.
It's like he's playing this high-stakes game of chess.
Except he doesn't know the rules.
And then Cortés decides to take him hostage.
Talk about escalating the situation.
That was a turning point.
A move that shattered any semblance of peace.
By taking Montezuma hostage, Cortés effectively held the Aztec Empire captive.
But it was a dangerous game, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Holding on to power, especially power seized like that, it rarely ends well. And that brings us to one of the most dramatic episodes in Diaz's account. The Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows. Just imagine the scene. The Spanish, completely outnumbered, weighed down by all their looted treasure.
Forced to flee Tenochtitlan under a hail of arrows and stones.
The canals were running red with blood, fortunes lost as treasures sank beneath the water.
A stark reminder that victory is never guaranteed, even the best-laid plans.
The Noche Triste shattered this image of Spanish invincibility.
They were driven out, their losses were huge.
Their aura of power gone.
It's a complete reversal of fortune, isn't it? One minute they're in control, the next they're running for their lives. Really shows you the spirit of the Aztecs, their determination to fight back.
Yeah, they were not giving up, not easily. Which makes the eventual outcome even more tragic. The Spanish, they regroup, they form new alliances.
And they return to Tenochtitlan, ready to lay siege to the city.
And this time, there's this invisible enemy that enters the picture.
Something no one could have anticipated.
Disease. Smallpox. A disease unknown in the Americas before the Spanish arrived.
It tore through Tenochtitlan like wildfire,
Decimating the population.
weakening their ability to resist.
It's a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of the world, even back then.
And how those connections, they often had devastating consequences.
The fall of Tenochtitlan, it was brutal.
A long, drawn-out siege.
And it wasn't just a military victory for the Spanish. It was this perfect storm of factors, their determination, the indigenous alliances they forged.
And, of course, the devastating impact of disease.
All of it together sealed the fate of the Aztec Empire.
But even in victory, you can tell, reading Diaz, it's not this clear-cut triumph. There's this sense of, anticlimax almost.
Yeah, like a touch of disappointment even.
They had endured so much, these conquistadors. Risked everything for gold and glory.
And in the end, it seems like the spoils of war, they paled in comparison to those initial expectations.
It makes you think about the stories we tell ourselves to justify these grand ambitions, and how often reality fails to live up to those expectations.
It's a cautionary tale for sure.
The Spanish conquest, for all its drama, its intrigue,
It's a reminder of the human cost of conquest.
the clash of cultures.
The unforeseen consequences that ripple out from our actions.
And maybe that's the most important takeaway from all this.
We have to be willing to question the narratives we've been given.
To consider those perspectives that are often silenced, forgotten.
To understand the Spanish conquest, we have to go beyond the simple story of victors and vanquished.
We have to wrestle with the nuances, the ethical dilemmas.
The things that make this period of history so fascinating, so relevant, even today.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one thing you hope our listeners will take away from this exploration?
I'd encourage everyone to learn more about the world that existed before the conquest.
The richness of Aztec culture, their innovations in art, architecture,
Their agriculture.
to truly understand the impact of what happened,
We have to understand what was lost.
what was irrevocably changed.
It's about recognizing the depth, the complexity of the Aztec civilization.
Not just their role in a narrative shaped by conquest.
Exactly.
And on that note, we'll leave you to continue your own exploration. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep seeking out those different perspectives, and keep diving deeper into the endlessly fascinating world of history.